Hey there, it's Phoebe from Quilted Pig, and welcome to my quilting studio. I'm glad you're here today. Now, we in central Oklahoma are still under quarantine, so we're stuck in the house. We're going to keep working on this quilt blocks that we started yesterday. But as I was sewing them all together to get to the next step, I realized there were some things we probably should have talked about on these blocks. And so I thought I'd do a part 1.1 just so we can talk about the things that I missed a little bit of that I think you'll probably want to know when you get started on your own. Now, to start with, I have some directional fabrics included in here. This one is words, but I have some others with people figures as well as cat figures that definitely have an up and a down. So looking at this quilt, I knew that this quilt will come out as a square, and so it's not going to have a top or a bottom. So I'm just going to let it go, and they can face whichever they go, because also I don't know which way I'm going to lay the blocks. So if you're going to do this, you'll need to decide, are directional fabrics going to bother you? If they are, you might not want to have them in your quilt. That also goes down to mixing up the fabrics. As a quilter, when I'm doing a scrap quilt, I still always have rules. Like I don't want this comic book fabric to be touching itself anywhere else in the block, that kind of thing. So the way I did this was I just laid them out on the table and just kind of dealt them out like cards until I had 25 unique blocks, which if you'll remember, we've got 25 black blocks, 25 white blocks. Which brings me to the next part. If you're doing a high contrast version of this the way that I am, you're probably going to want to change threads in between. I know normally we would like to just piece it all, piece it all, piece it all, iron, and then do the next thing. Do all the darks at one time with the darker thread and all the lights at a different time with the lighter thread. Now, that being said, the squares, they have the spot where the four pieces come together. And it is not 100% absolutely crucial that these match up. However, I want you to try your best to get them to match up. The reason behind that is when we go to trim out the blocks, we need them to be square, and that is the best way to do it. And plus, if you're a beginning quilter, it's a great way to practice where it's not super crucial to the end product, but it's helpful. So that's a good thing to practice on that. Which brings me up to pressing. You can see on the backs of these, I worked really hard to press them very, very flat. Again, I used starch on some of them just because they still felt kind of like they might ease around a little bit. And since we're going to be cutting a bias seam a bias cut down the middle of these blocks, we want to be sure that we're giving ourselves the most prep that we can so that it works out easiest for us. Now you can also furl the seams if you want. I did not do that. That's just not how I do on something like a 4-patch like this. If it had a whole bunch more seams, I probably would have looked into doing that. I might regret that later, but so far on my test blocks, it looks okay. So referring to my list, I also realized that while I assumed you can cut 5-inch squares on your own, we didn't talk about the strips. Now, the reason the strips are important is because when you slice one of these in half, you need 14.5 inches at minimum, because remember that when this comes out, the strip will still continue to a point beyond the point of the triangle. And so we need to have that long enough. Well, when I did the math on my fabric that I chose to use for the strips, I discovered that it's about a half an inch short of being able to do 3 14.5-inch strips across the width of the fabric. So it's going to waste a lot of fabric to do it that way. So what I did instead was I cut a width of fabric at 15 inches. I thought, well, I'll give myself that extra half inch for scooch if I need to. So I cut a width of fabric strip at 15 inches and then went lengthwise down that strip to the 1.5-inch strips in order to get that. And so that meant I needed two 15-inch widths, which meant I needed about 30 inches of this strip fabric, so just under a yard. And then the last thing regarding the strips is I took this and I folded them in half lengthwise and marked the center by ironing them. So we'll see if that works out for me or not. I don't think it's going to be necessary, but we'll check that out in the next video. So again, thank you for watching. I'm glad that you're quilting along with me while we're under quarantine. And I hope that you'll like and subscribe to my channel, and I hope that you have a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.